Every day in South Africa, as many as 83 people are murdered. But in March 2011, Durban faced something even darker. 4 men hacked to death in 8 days. No motive, no connection, no mercy. Tonight, we break down the Brighton beach axe murders and the man behind them, former Blue Bulls flanker Joseph Ntshongwana. Apologies, folks, for Tuesday night. Unfortunately, we had a little bit of a personal issue that we had to postpone the show from Tuesday, but we are here on Thursday. We will be back to Tuesday next week. So this is just for this week because we've done all our prepping and planning for the episode, but we were ready to go. But then we just had to call a pause in the last minute. So apologies for that. Do please hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Hit the like if you enjoy the show, and the bell will give you a warning every time we load new content, or so you'll be aware when we are starting episodes and all that kind of stuff. So tonight we're talking the Brighton beach axe murder. Of course, as always, I'm joined by Jared Labuskaghni, former head of forensic psychology at SAPS, and yes, and now, of course, a permanent resident across the seas, our Northern Hemisphere co-host, and Jared, apologies for Tuesday as well, man, because I actually called it off myself last minute. But we're here now and, ready to talk about a case that we've covered before. But now we get the opportunity to dive into it a little bit deeper, to look at some of the evidence and some of the case files that you have. By the way, guys, if you want to buy us a coffee, there you go. Just scan that guy there. How's it going, Jared? How's your week been?
My week has been pretty decent, thank you very much. Yeah, it's not been too rainy, not been too cold, and I think that's a win for me.
Well, clearly what's happened is the rain has all come down here to South Africa, because honestly, I'm going to say you might hear like extremely raucous thunder going on, because it's been all over. There's a heck of a storm going on, and it's just like, I don't know, I'm wearing winter clothes, Gerard, and it's like the end of November. It's summer in a week's time. It's ridiculous.
Well, I missed those thunderstorms. You don't get those over here.
Yeah, no, it's proper. It's been a real couple of weeks of real proper high felt weather. But here we are talking about the weather, like really interesting. How interesting we are talking about the weather. We're talking about a very interesting case tonight, and I guess we've got actually the last weekend of international rugby coming up this weekend for the year, really, or one of the last weekends rather. We've got the Boks taking on Ireland in that big clash, and we find ourselves kind of loosely connected to the world of rugby. Well, fairly connected to the world of rugby in what is quite a surprising case, and must have been quite a surprise when folks kind of figured out who the actual culprit was here. But give us a little bit of context, set the scene, take us down to KZN, Gerard.
Yes, I mean, all of this, I've just got my notes in front of me. I mean, we're talking early sort of 2011, around about March, is when a lot of this comes to the attention of, say, a task team and looking at it from a serial perspective. And this was sort of in the Lamontville, Brighton Beach sort of area, that part of Durban, which is just kind of like a bit southern side of Durban, if I have to put it that way. It's still part of Durban itself. So it's a fairly, nice area. It's a suburby area, etc. And just a fascinating case, because who the person was in the end, it was pretty much male-on-male murders, which we don't really get a lot of in serial murder cases. The guy was using an axe, which the only other murder series I've had where an axe was used was the Butterworth murder series in the Eastern Cape a few years later. We typically find axes were being used, in my cases, in like family murders. From Bradar murder was an axe that we've covered. The Atwatwa case where a young boy murdered his whole family, that was an axe. So that's kind of where
Jose. We had Jose as well, I think, wasn't it?
Jose da Silva, yeah. He killed his single victim. So it's not definitely a common serial murder weapon. So there's lots of reasons why, and of course we had sort of decapitations thrown into the mix. Not a very common thing. So just really interesting on so many different levels.
Absolutely. I just want to take this opportunity just to say hi to everyone joining the chat. We've got a whole bunch of people with us already, so we can say hello to my mom in Wales. Wait, no, why is it? I set up the messages to be the right size and to be nice in the middle of the screen and like that, and then this computer just will kind of reset it. But then, so we can say hi to my mom. We can say hi to Carmen. Yay, finally made it in time to join a live episode. So excited. And then we've got Bianca saying good evening. Carmen, hoping I'll finally get my shout out from Gerard now. So there
Hello,
you go.
Carmen. Well done. Thank you.
Good evening from Pretoria. Okay, so everyone, welcome to the chat. It's lovely to have you. Please do drop your questions or comments as we go, and I'll kind of keep an eye on them, and we'll go through them bit by bit. So tell us, Jared, this is when you were very much active at SAPS. How did this come across your desk? Take us back to the day that you became aware of this case.
So in a way, this case and my involvement, or my unit's involvement, started a number of years before this, probably like 2004, because the guy who kind of, when it broke, was the guy in charge of the team was Colonel Jason McGray. And Jason had attended our serial murder training in 2004 in Pretoria on, how to investigate and deal with serial murder investigations. So when these things started to happen, he pretty quickly realized this is an IPU kind of case. So I was actually coincidentally down in Durban for another case when I get a phone call from him saying, hey, we've just had a number of murders over the past few days, and we think it's a serial. We need your input. And I said, well, I happened to be in Durban, and I was able to meet him literally the next day. And he took me then to the various crime scenes as they had happened up until that point in time. And my opinion was absolutely, you got to look at this as a serial. It's number of people, short period of time, small geographical area, all being chopped with an axe. Quite a number of them decapitated. You'd be an idiot not to look at these as being potentially the work of one individual. But ironically, when I drafted my little feedback letter that he wanted me to send to the provincial office to inform our provincial coordinator on serial murders and just let the provincial office know that we think there's a serial, the provincial office said, no, they're of a different view, that it's not a serial, which we thought was quite interesting. Because, I think you do have like the police unit whose expertise in serials telling you this is probably a serial. And I said to Jason, but how would these guys know anything different? Has somebody come to look at the dockets and do an inspection? He said, no, he's had the dockets in his possession the whole time. So based on what information the province seemed to think they had a better opinion, I do not know. But the fortunate thing in this situation is that because Jason McGray and Brighton Beach Station was like a cluster station, so it kind of was an overseer station for a number of little stations like Lamontville, etc. Jason could anyway pull together a task team of people. And in that sense, it didn't really matter that the provincial office didn't agree. And he just did that. He put together, a team of about 4 or 5 people, Rico Naidu, Marius van der Looy, and I think 1 or 2 other people. And Jason just ran with it anyway. And we just continued to give our advice.
Okay. Shall we go through the different cases? Let's go through the cases one by one. And then we'll put together we'll figure our way through how the investigation unfolded at the same time. So do you want to take us to the first count then, Gerard?
Yes.
The first instance. And I do have slides to show. So you just tell me if this is...
Okay, that's right. Because remember, often we're not in the investigation. You're dealing with these cases as they pop up. It might not be the order of the murders actually in the end. So we're going to run through it, though, in the cases in the order that the cops came across it, so you get more of an investigative feel for what we were dealing with. So the first one was 20 March and 2011. Tim Nkosi Kebekulu, who was actually at Impangeni for a funeral. It was the weekend, and his boss said, oh, my goodness, please, can you come back tomorrow? I need an extra worker. It's a public holiday. And he said, okay, cool. He'll come back. And he starts to head back from Impangeni, which I guess... it's like a 3-hour drive, I guess, from southern side of Durban, maybe a bit less, if I recall correctly, 2 hours. And he calls his wife, Mabel, at about 9 o'clock, saying, I'm almost at home. I'm in Montclair. I'm at the garage. Do you need anything? And she said, yes, please bring us home some bread. Sadly, that's the last that Mabel heard from her partner. So what happens is, we have statements from two guys who happened to be driving past that area, and really it was literally almost like on a turning circle, where a couple of roads intersect. And the one guy driving, it's Mr. Donnelly, was driving, and he sort of sees someone chopping something on the side of the road. And thought, well, maybe it's a snake or something or whatever. And he drives closer and he sees, oh my God, this is someone who's killing someone with an axe. Another guy drives past, kind of sees the same thing. They both call the police. But the second guy, Peter Goldie, I think was his name, was driving past. And he sort of stops 50 meters down the road and says he sees a guy leaving the scene in a small gray or silver car. And he was luckily able to point out the driver at an entity parade. So you have these people who see this happening, stop, call the cops, don't interfere, understandably so. We wouldn't want people to try and interfere when a guy's chopping someone with an axe, unless you are very well trained or have a firearm. But his wife Mabel's now thinking, but he's not home yet. He was down the road at a petrol station. It's now 45 minutes later. So she starts to, I think for a quick, she phones his cell phone and a policeman answers. Now, I can guarantee you, if you ever phone your partner's phone and a cop answers, something good has not happened. And the cop gives some really silly explanation like, oh, he's here with us, but he's sleeping. Like, what? And she already thought something's happened. And then I think she phones again and another cop answers and she's like, yeah, we're here with him. We'll bring him to you shortly. And she thinks, this is not good. So she phones her employer and says, can you please take me to the police station? On the way to driving to the police station, they actually drive past what turns out to be his crime scene. But they see somebody covered with a foil blanket. They go to the station, and then the policemen say, well, actually, he's back at this particular turning circle in Kenyon Howden Road. And she realizes that's the scene they just drove past. And she goes past. I think she actually went back, and I think she identified him at the scene, which is quite horrific. And yeah, I think that one... He was almost decapitated. He was like, the head was literally a few strands of tissue keeping it to the body. So the guy's intention would have been to completely decapitate him. So that was the first one.
I actually did make a mental, I pointed this out on WhatsApp to you the other day, is that we did this case, I think, very early on as an audio podcast when we just started. And it was kind of, I hadn't been exposed to a lot of case materials in those days. So I recall, you resent me all of the case footage now this week for our conversation. And I recall when you sent it to me previously, and you'd edited out all of the horrific kind of decapitation photos, because obviously because you were concerned about my precious disposition. Whereas now you're just more than happy to just share the full keynote, the full presentation. But yeah, okay, so that's the first instance then. On to the next one. I'll just jump back into Prezzo and we can move on to the next one.
So that was 20 March. The next one is 2 days later. Also, again, sort of 10, 11 at night. Also about 10, 11 at night, a member of the public came across the body of an adult male lying in the middle of the traffic circle in Lamontville. But he is successfully decapitated, head nowhere to be seen. Police obviously called out, and then not long thereafter, that evening, probably like 20, 30 minutes later, about a kilometer down the road, a homeless person, Tabisa Mofokeng, was scrounging for food in a municipal dustbin. There you go. That's us. I took that picture when we went to go visit the scenes. And essentially going to the dustbin, and he finds the head. Now, what is an interesting coincidence, I believe it is purely coincidence, as you see, there's a KFC, Merebank KFC. The victim actually worked at that KFC, and I don't think that this is something the suspect necessarily realized. I think it might be just completely coincidence. And so the head was found. And here they did call the wife to come over to have a look and see if it's his head. Again, sure. I don't know why the cops were doing it in that particular fashion.
Yeah.
And Petrus was a 47-year-old man, as I said, worked at the KFC. So clearly the head wasn't for Muti purposes, because of course it's been recovered. And again, by that point, the task team is now put together because they realize we've had two 2 days apart, both involving attempted or successful decapitation, small geographical area. McGray said this is a serial.
Just as a matter of interest, what is the kind of proper procedure if a body is, divided into sections as part of the murder, and then they put, how do you do an identification then? Would it just be putting kind of the body back together, revealing a little bit of the face, or?
Yeah. So obviously, once the scenes are processed, everything's been documented, any evidence has been collected, the forensic pathology services collect the body and then take it back to the mortuary. And your identification should really be done at the mortuary. And yes, what you would probably do is, because obviously there might be identifying marks on the body, you would have the body there. In this case, they'd probably put the head together and just put something, a tissue, a cloth, a sheet or something over the wound to see. But of course, you can't be guaranteed that that is the head. So forensically, you'd have to compare DNA of the head to DNA of the body. The wife might be able to say, yeah, that's his head, and maybe there's a scar or a tattoo on his body. So you can have a fairly good idea, but definitely forensically, you would have to actually link them with by means of DNA to confirm that it's the right head. But all identification of the body should not really take place at the scene. And it's phenomenally traumatic for a family member or whoever knows the person well enough to identify them. And it's just, you don't want to do that. You want to do it rather in a controlled environment, prep the person properly, not at an active scene.
Yeah, absolutely. Just let's drop into some of the comments here coming through on the chat, and do please contribute to the chat. We always love to hear from you guys and engage with you as we go through the conversation. Hello, hometown, but I actually remember this case. So, evening all, Brighton and Ansie's Beach was my playground growing up, and into my 30s. Great fun, great beach and waves, and the Wimpy, of course. I mean, all those towns have got a great Wimpy. Hello from a very windy Cape Town. Look at us, all of us talking about the weather tonight. That's how interesting we are. And then Helen says hello tonight. Hello, Helen. And then Helen also has let us know that she was at school with Joseph. So Helen, if you want to tell us a little bit about your a comment or two on what Joseph was like at school, that would be interesting. And then Gabe plays is back with us as always. Did Joseph ever explain to you why he took the head with him instead of just leaving it? Are we jumping the gun there a bit, Jared, or should we answer that?
Yes.
Okay, let's jump. We'll come back to that question then. Okay, Gabe.
Good question. Yeah.
All right then. Onto the next one.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see if there's anything else that I had from my notes about that particular case. Again, there was a witness. They did a canvassing of the area. One lady had seen someone hacking away, then someone coming back, picking something up, putting it in a plastic bag, and then a silver vehicle leaving. So a lot of these cases, people have seen that silver, like a hatchback. I think it was like an Chef Avio, a little hatchback car. All right. And again, it's this whole thing. If you don't do knock and drops, I mean, they found 2 security guards further down the road who had seen something who hadn't come forward. So, this good old-fashioned knocking on a door and asking if someone saw something, it's really, you have to do that. But you have to put the effort into doing that. That's the other thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So
Felix.
The next case to come to our attention is the attempted murder of Felix Mdluli. So now, of course, this is in the media. The police got their team going. And then someone from the community tells them, you know what? I know of another person who had been attacked in the same area the day after that the murder had occurred. That's the murder that we just spoke about where the guy was successfully decapitated. So they managed to trace this guy, interview him, and basically what happened is probably, I think, just before that incident on 22 March. I just want to check the times. Yeah, it would have been. So first we have this, turns out we have an attempted case that didn't work out, and then he went on and decapitated the guy we just spoke about. So this one with Felix, he'd been walking around at about 10:30 in the evening, and he noticed a silver grey Peugeot with Eastern Cape license plates driving around, drives past him slowly, does a U-turn, passes him, stops, and the guy gets out. He says this like really well-built guy exits the vehicle. He's got a plastic bag in it. You can see there's something heavy in the plastic bag, which he thought, oh, maybe this is a firearm. And the driver approaches him and starts speaking to him in Zulu with a sort of a Johannesburg accent as he described it. And then suddenly just starts accusing him of sleeping with his daughter, giving his daughter AIDS, And then he suddenly pulls out this axe and he has a go at Nduli. Now, Nduli was luckily quick and nimble, and basically the axe didn't strike where it wanted to hit, and kind of just hit him on the side of his rib cage, and he bolts like a smart man and disappears with the suspect chasing after him, and he manages to escape. And then he did an identikit later on. Now, it's interesting that he didn't go to the police and report this, but anyway, once the police are involved with Jason McGray and his team, they get him to do an identikit, and does that sort of sketch, and does a sketch which actually kind of does have a lot of resemblance to old Mr. Ntshongwana when we see a picture of him later. Just a point of interest, identikit is what we typically just refer to, one of these things that you see on the screen. But identikit is actually a brand of software. Back in those days, there was little cards that you put on top. Now it's a software. It was actually a brand. So overseas, if you say identikit, they don't know what you're talking about. If you say like a facial compilation or composite, oh, okay. It's like calling a vacuum cleaner a Hoover, who was actually a brand of vacuum cleaners. But because in South Africa, it just became synonymous with facial compilations or composites, they just referred them all as identikits. Just a little point of interest.
Okay. And we're starting to get a sense, like we say, that this is a pretty a guy of pretty big stature and quite an intimidating figure. So, yeah, I can imagine these guys kind of checking him out on the side of the road. They're not only seeing something bizarre happening, but they're also seeing a really big chap doing it.
Yeah, big bald chap. And some of them actually say he was built like a rugby player.
Oh, really?
Ironically, as we'll see now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's jump. The next one is literally the following day, 23rd of March, about 3:00 in the morning. So literally a couple hours later, if you look at it that way, after the attempted case and successful case. And this is the old Simon Ngidi, who's, I guess, walking home at 3:00 in the morning. But the homeowner, this is the view from the homeowner's house. He suddenly hears a commotion outside in the street, and he kind of opens his window, and he sees like somebody fighting with somebody. He's like, "Hey, Haibo Buti, what are you doing?" And sees someone chasing a person with clearly what he sees to be an axe, the yellow handle, which was quite a good, he noticed that quite well, and eventually screams to the guy. The guy kind of looks at him and then runs off. And he calls the cops and goes outside, and he also describes him as a tall, well-built, bald guy, and was able to do an identikit. But essentially goes outside and sees a person who has been then murdered in the streets. Not decapitated in this instance, but a lot of chopping with the axe of old Mr. Simon Ngidi, and said, again, he passes away. And again, an innocent man walking down the street, not harming anybody. And I said, that's at the point where we happen to be in Durban. Jason gives us a call this following morning and says, guys, we need your help. And hey, I'm coincidentally actually in Durban, and I'll see you that same day or the next day. I think I went to go see him with my colleague, Warrant Officer AJ Lachman.
Okay. Yeah, very convenient that you guys were down there for a start. But can you give us a sense of, this is kind of hectic, I imagine, for the people in the immediate vicinity. What is the kind of sense like around the community? What is the atmosphere like in the community?
It was in the newspapers. Then you also had people the news came out that for one of the victims, or two of the victims, he had said, "You gave my daughter AIDS," etc. So he was almost seen in the media like he had a lot of support. He was like a vigilante getting justice for his daughter who was raped and given AIDS. Like, the dude didn't have a daughter, firstly. And the comments what was fascinating was the comments online. People like, I totally support this guy. If someone raped my daughter and gave her AIDS, I'd also want to kill him. So in a way, whether that was his intention or not, we don't know. But the impact was he was kind of becoming like this vigilante hero of a father standing up for his daughter. And that was quite interesting.
Yeah. And it is worth noting in that context that the stigma around HIV/AIDS would have been quite a lot stronger back in those, even then, even though there would have been good kind of medications available on the market. In South Africa, because we had such an HIV problem, the issue, there was a huge amount of stigma around that disease, wasn't there?
Yeah.
All right. So Helen has jumped back in and she said that, so she responded to our query, giving us a little bit of, Joseph was very good at rugby, very polite. Yeah. So sad that this happened. So many folks had high hopes for him. And I'm wondering if he had some severe untreated head injuries during his rugby career. A very good
Yeah,
question.
this whole concussion syndrome that was discovered with the American football players. I can't think of what the proper term of it is. What's interesting is that when it was discovered with those American football players, even though they got these big helmets, that a lot of them had severe concussion issues. And it was actually, I think, was it a Kenyan doctor working in the United States who first discovered this, and everybody laughed at him and thought it was nonsense, and what does he know? And actually, turns out he was right. I think it was Kenyan or Nigerian doctor working in the US who discovered this thing about football players and having from all these head bumps, concussions that causes severe damage and trauma to their brains. It was affecting their behavior. Yeah.
CTE would be what we were looking for, chronic traumatic encephalopathy. There we go. How did he choose his victims, or was it wrong place, wrong time? And I did want to kind of ask you this as well in the context of the investigation now, because you guys are there. You're now thinking, okay, how do we get this guy? How do we track him down? Who is he? And one of those things that you would no doubt be considering is there a linkage between these victims? Is this, a gang, a rival gang, and they're taking out members of the rival gang or something like that, Yeah.
So we didn't see it as anything more than anything beyond being a serial, which means that we would assume that there's no history between the suspect and the victim. Although he was saying he gave my daughter AIDS, etc., etc. Well, he said that to two people. So are you accusing multiple people of giving your daughter AIDS, etc.? So we saw it as a serial, an unusual one because, like I said, it's male on male, acts being involved, but small geographical area, people being targeted. So that probably would be victims of chance. So he would set out to go find a victim, but he wouldn't have stalked the victim for days and knew who he was going to target. It just happened to be at the wrong place, right time for him. And decide, yep, this guy meets my category, I'm going after males, and he then targets a particular victim. So none of this sort of pre-planning of who, but pre-planning of what he's going to do, for sure.
Yes. And are you thinking this is an area that he's familiar with? Are you what other aspects of the profile are you starting to run through at this stage?
Yes, as we've seen with a lot of our other serials, when you get the small geographical area where you're finding bodies, that's what a warning sign typically of serial murder. And what we do know from that is very often your suspect lives or works or used to live or work in that area. He has some association with that area which made him feel comfortable enough to seek out victims, commit his crimes, and leave the bodies in those areas. And very often, as I said, that is a home association. And as we'll see in this case, he lived literally smack bang in the middle of where all these crime scenes were. So this was his home territory. Yeah. So basically, as I said, the geographical stuff, we know the suspects typically live or work or used to live or work in that particular area. And in this case, he did live very close by. So this was his hunting ground. He felt obviously comfortable and safe enough to operate, go seek out victims, and also get away, hide away, etc. Now, what's interesting is we often refer to this as the Brighton Beach serial murders, but none of the actual murders occurred in the Brighton Beach policing areas. It was Lamontville and I think one or two of the other ones. The task team came from Brighton Beach, so actually a little bit of a misnomer. Other people have just said we would call him the X-Man or whatever.
I mean, this flies in the face of the typically very scientific way that we name serial killers in South Africa. Normally, it's an extremely well-researched and well thought through process, Gerard.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
I mean, the task team just used to refer to him as Chopper, as I said, but ex-murderer, Durban ex-murderer, Brighton Beach ex-murderer, those are the kind of names that have stuck.
Yeah, okay, and my TV's back looking normal as well. Okay, that's good. Having trouble with my Wi-Fi in Pretoria too. Thank you, Angie, for that. It's not just us then, okay? Let's get on to how this guy got caught, Jared, because have we got any more cases, first of all?
So the next sort of cases are kind of really how the case got cracked. So obviously there's lots of media attention. And suddenly we're reading in a newspaper article that there was an attempted murder case that happened on the 23rd of March. In other words, again, the following day. So now the police try to track down this person who hadn't yet opened up a case, and then opened up a case. And he describes that he was walking home at like 20 to 9 on the 21st of March. Sorry, we discovered it on the 23rd of March, but the case happened on the 21st of March, 20 to 10 at night. Saw a vehicle drove past him, exited the vehicle, decided to walk on the other side of the road, and the suspect sort of runs after him, and he just gaps it and again runs down the road, and he sees the guy remove an axe out of a plastic bag and threw it at him. So of course it's all over the media now, and that becomes again another piece of the puzzle in terms of the timeline, in terms of the vehicle, in terms of the axe. We're finding out about all the attempts and successful stuff. And then I think this was the next case, was the one that really came to, how the case was cracked. So again, a family member of someone who'd opened up a similar attempted incident the previous year, November of the previous year, the family member of this victim comes up and says, you know what, but my brother had an incident last year on the 26th of November, 2010 at about 8:30 in the evening, Shleli Mtolo, who was sort of walking down Sterling Road in Yellowwood Park, and a guy stops next to him in a grey silver vehicle, and again asks him in Zulu, do you know a girl called Zama? And Tolo says, no, I don't. The guy gets out and then whacks him on the head with a baton. Now, whether it was a baton or actually an axe, and he just sort of misinterpreted it as a baton, we don't know. And he says he passed out for a few seconds, then he continues to sort of fight, scream, and runs off, and the suspect flees down the road. But Tolo manages to get the registration number of a silver grey Chevrolet Aveo. So now why the detectives back then, because this guy did go to the police in November to report this attempted assault on him or assault upon him. Obviously it was before all these incidences happened, so we don't have that context. But here you have a guy who comes in to report an assault or attempted assault, whatever you want to call it, has the registration number of the guy or the vehicle the guy jumped into, and seems like nothing had been done by the police, which is a big problem. But he also describes him as this big wrestler, rugby player type of guy. And then he said, but I've also seen this guy walking around 8 days later outside the local spa in Yellowwood Park, which again comes back to the issue of comfort zones. So based on this, when McGray and them find this out, they get the docket, they speak to the guy, they get the number, trace the address of where that vehicle is registered, and it is in Yellowwood Park, I think Sandpiper Road, and they go and start to make inquiries amongst the neighbors, and the neighbors say, yeah, there's a very big guy, rugby player type of guy, bald head, who lives there. So just another piece of information that's saying this is probably the right guy. So they prepare their whole task team, get ready, and then they go and one evening, and they actually go and arrest him.
And they head off to the suspect's house.
Yeah, so basically it was his mother's house, a very nice big double-story house in the area. Some of the cops, I think Marius and Rico, go around the back of the house. Other cops go around the front of the house, because obviously you have to do that. And Marius and Rico at the back, and suddenly this big hulking guy comes out. And they thought, oh God, there's only two of us at the back here. If this guy wants to get into it, we're going to really suffer. And luckily, the suspect, Phindile, Joseph Ntshongwana, doesn't put up a fight. They put him into they actually struggled. I think they couldn't actually fit handcuffs on him. I think they had to use, it was either two sets of handcuffs or leg irons, which are a bit bigger because they go around your ankles, to actually get this guy sort of not restrained, but into some kind of setup with handcuffs. And that's him not long after the arrest.
Yeah, so
at the house.
Tell us a little bit about this guy. I mean, we know he's was a professional rugby player, but where did it all go wrong?
So let me just scroll down to my details about our guy. So he himself had been a success. He actually played for, I'm trying to find it now. He actually played for the national team. He was definitely in the under-21 Springbok team. He played for the Blue Bulls. And I'm trying to think I don't think he ever played for the so-called adult Springboks. But it was, I think, one of the first black players in the Blue Bulls. So phenomenally good career. And we spoke to the owner of the Blue Balls Club, as part of our further investigations. And they said that, he was a great player, a lot of potential, then he kind of just dropped off the radar for some reason. And he wanted to come back in 2009, and they were prepared to give him a chance. But again, he kind of just didn't really follow through. And I think that's because already the sort of mental health issues were starting to kind of play out their scene. And now, what's interesting is that, like someone said, I think Shelley said, it's he was a great guy, nice guy. And often these people they're not as if they're these rampant criminals, lying, cheating, stealing, committing crimes left, right, and center. They tend to be like very decent people, unfortunately, except for their murder series. So but kind of dropped off the radar. Then went to study a bit, and then was working, I think, at like a Total Sports. So kind of really just his life went a bit downhill for some reason, and as that is probably because of the mental health issues that were starting to creep up.
Yeah, he didn't play for the national squad, but like you say, he did play under 21s in 1998, and of course he played for the Blue Bulls as well. And yeah, I mean, I'd like to just dig into this CTE component a little bit, just to quiz you on one or two things around that.
Oh my goodness! I don't know if I can answer the question.
No, not necessarily. Not about the condition itself, but just about how. Is that something that's now these kinds of things are considered in the course of an investigation, and how would they be considered? And with the technology advancing for being able to identify different kind of, traumatic brain injuries, etc., and our understanding expands with regards to what an injury in a particular part of the brain might do to affect a person's cognizance or behavior or what have you. How is that starting, is that factoring into your universe? That when you're assessing somebody psychologically, you're also considering the kind of medical components and the physiological components at play as well.
Well, it would be relevant when they were doing the competency to stand trial and criminal responsibility assessment, which he was sent for. They would, if they felt that there was a neuro component, they would then do things like CAT scans, etc., etc. Now, the issue with CTE, I don't know a lot about the CTE issue, but I do know that it's not as if if one of the side effects of that is you're going out killing and assaulting people. So again, any potential medical or psychological, psychiatric issue that could be related to the incidents would then be dealt with in the observation period, and they would do whatever necessary assessments. And he did have lengthy observations. And then he had a second observation, and then he had a private observation. So we had a whole bunch of professors and doctors and really smart people who did look at him at Fort Napier, and then obviously the option of privately. The big focus really was on the fact that he had severe mental health issues, which we can jump into whenever we think it's right.
Well, what was his background in that? I mean, had he been institutionalized at any point? Was he under treatment or?
Yeah. Oh, here's all my stuff about him. He played S.A. Barbarians. So basically in 2009, December, he was diagnosed for the first time with mental health problems. Now, that doesn't mean, of course, that's the first time that mental health issues were rearing their head. That's also the time when I think the rugby guy said he kind of disappeared off the radar again after he wanted to come back and play again. So 2009, he's diagnosed at R.K. Khan Hospital in Durban, with what we call schizoaffective and bipolar. Now, schizoaffective is really when someone's got schizophrenia and a mood disorder combined. So it's like a double diagnosis, which is, not particularly great. So the person would have symptoms of schizophrenia, and as I said, in this case, bipolar mood disorder, which the old days people called manic depression, which means you probably have at least one or two low depressed episodes, and then maybe one or two manic opposite of depression kind of episodes at some point. And that was kind of like in the multiple times when he was assessed was pretty much the consistent diagnosis. So the problem was he wasn't really taking his medication. So by July, 6 months later, he's back at hospital, and he seemed to have at that point what we call persecutory delusions, or sometimes people call them paranoid delusions. People are out to get me. And of course, his mood, that's the mood component, was very elevated. So he was kind of manic, and it was full of energy, not really focused on his thoughts. And that's, again, something separate to the schizophrenia. He then is in the process of being transferred from R.K. Khan Hospital to King George Hospital in Durban in July, and he bolts out the ambulance and disappears. He ends up in Cape Town, And by the 13th of August, about a month later, he's admitted to Falkenberg Hospital for, again, the diagnosis is bipolar mood disorder and a consideration that we could be dealing with schizoaffective. So the kind of diagnosis has been kind of the same things are being picked up by the hospitals. He's there for a month and he's discharged a month later from Falkenberg. Now, to be admitted for a month is a long time nowadays. They tend to have very, very short admission periods. So that's quite substantial. And then, so he's discharged on 17th of September 2010, but by December that year, he's back being admitted to King George. Again, persecutory delusions, auditory hallucinations, which means he's hearing things that aren't really there, not sleeping, which again has probably got to do with his mood issues, and is discharged in January the following month. And again, the diagnosis is reiterated: schizoaffective, bipolar, with a manic episode recently, and the psychotic features which would relate back to the schizophrenia part of it. And then he goes on to having sort of follow-ups at local clinics, chats with clinic, getting his medication, 1 or 2 follow-ups at the hospital. But on his discharge in January of 2011, which was again about 3 months before the murders take place, he seems to be stable. There's no reports of aggressive or inappropriate behavior. He does seem to be isolating himself. And he has follow-ups in February where they're not noticing anything. He denies, any problems are present.
Okay. I have a note here that he also became increasingly religious.
Yeah, that could be not uncommon in people with mental health challenges, that that does get to be a bit of a religious sort of theme to those things. Yeah. Okay.
He'd also had quite a nasty knee injury, from what I understand, that had kind of affected his career as well. I remember recall when we did the again, we spoke about him earlier, the Jose case. He had that issue with his leg, which all of these things kind of play a part in affecting your overall, how close you are to kind of the edge, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, your body affects your mind, etc. So again, if you're going through health challenges, that's going to impact upon you in terms of your psychological state of mind. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
This is a purely a question, but I'll ask it. Was it true that his mother pulled some strings to get him out of a mental facility? Was there any notes of? Don't know. Okay. Was in hospital?
Well, he did spend a significant amount of time in hospitals, so it wasn't,
Yeah.
He was definitely getting picked up and taken in for periods of time. But whether she, tried to get him out earlier, I mean, I'm not sure. The hospital, I mean, you like to think that doctors won't discharge someone until that's deemed okay in their best interests.
Yeah, exactly. Tetrafen says, I knew someone who had a very bad motorbike accident, was in hospital for months, came out a totally different person, angry and kind of scary. He was later diagnosed as a psychopath after accessory to murder. So there you go. I mean, these things are very real.
If it's a motorcycle injury or any vehicle injury, if you hit the frontal lobe part, this is kind of the part that restricts your behavior, makes you think about not doing something, sort of your sense of guilt and responsibility is often near the frontal lobe. So if you do have frontal lobe damage, that thing that inhibits you from doing things that you have the impulse to do ain't working so well. And people can then end up behaving inappropriately, reacting violently to things that normally people wouldn't have. So yeah, I mean, in that case, if that was relevant, it could impact upon someone's accountability and possibility to put them on trial.
Yeah. We'll just take a couple more questions. Angie asked, were there any known indicators that are known from his childhood, such as animal abuse, etc., or did this mental health challenge only develop later in life?
So there's no known history, as far as we know, of him hurting animals or significant childhood injuries. That he had to seem to have a very normal, childhood, nothing that stood out in that sense, Angie.
Okay. And one last one, then we'll go back to our slides and we'll look at some of the evidence that was found at his home. Was he living on his own or with family? Did they not suspect anything?
So basically, in that big double-story house was his mom, who was a lecturer in law, I think the helper, and then he kind of stayed at the back on the sort of bottom level where there was like a self-contained flat. And I just think that the mom knew he had mental health issues. he was withdrawing, he was, strange, and she kind of, I think, just left him largely to his own devices. He was also a massive guy, and the mom was a relatively petite lady. So, what are you going to do anyway? But I don't think she had obviously any idea that this was taking place. But I think he was kind of like, as long as he's relatively calm and quiet, he's there, he's got his mental health challenges. I don't think she was going to sort of interfere too much in his daily life.
Guys, do please keep dropping your questions and comments in the chat. Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for another interesting video. It's a balmy -10 today in Alberta.
Oh, in Alberta. I'm heading off to Calgary on Sunday, so I hope it's not that cold there. So Alberta's a province, and Calgary is in Alberta, in case people were wondering.
Thank you, Gerard. You clearly passed your test to become a Canadian there.
There you go.
Okay, so let's talk about the scene and what was found at the scene, and then let's get into the court case a little bit. I do just want to say to people, please do hit like if you're enjoying the show. If you're not already a subscriber, this is YouTube. The thing is to hit subscribe. If you tune into a channel, then at some point you subscribe, guys. So hit subscribe. If you want to become a channel member and contribute to the show, just to the fund that allows us to kind of make this a little bit more sustainable, then do so. You can also drop us a super like, or you can scan the QR code here and buy us a coffee. Up to you if you'd like to contribute. But it does help, guys, and that is all part of this new media landscape that we find ourselves in as we...
And the money does not go to Paul buying shirts, so don't worry.
No, it doesn't, because then I'd have tons of great shirts because I have such great taste. Okay, so now we're going to go back to the crime scene, and we're going to take a look at a sketch of the suspect's room, and then we'll take a look at some of the evidence that was found.
Yeah, so the important stuff just to keep in mind, so that's this little flatlet downstairs. You'll see the dog kennel, sorry, it's spelt incorrectly, on the right-hand side with all those little A, B, C, D. That's all exhibits that were found. Whenever you see A, B, C, D, E, that would refer to a particular exhibit that would be labeled and referenced in the photograph album. So basically, what we have let's start with the kennel. So they didn't have a dog at the time, and Marius van der Looy, Inspector van der Looy, went to go look into the kennel, and he found the axe with the sort of the yellow wooden handle, etc. He found a pair of red, black and silver Nike shoes. And if you see here, you can't see it so well, but the left-hand shoe, and then in front of the left-hand shoe is the toe cap that had come off. Now, when they found the shoes, they didn't find the toe cap. We'll get to where that was found later because that's very important, and it's also important about how much attention you need to pay at a crime scene. So they found the axe, they found the shoes with one without a toe cap, a black trash bag, a pair of jeans, a red cap, what else? A pair of socks, an orange bag, a green plastic bag, a long sleeve jersey, white trousers, black trousers, and a plastic container, and some rotting meat. So that's what they found. And then inside, the most relevant things I think inside was the fact that they found DNA of a unknown male, female DNA, and an unknown male DNA was obtained from the bathroom.
Okay.
The female DNA was eventually linked to a lady, I think, one of our victims we haven't discussed yet, and the unknown male DNA profile was, I think, was a mystery, I think, if I recall correctly.
Okay, and obviously they're lit up with what would be blood.
Yeah, so Blue Star, which is what we spray to find cleaned up blood, and it gives that luminescent stuff. People in TV programs often talk about luminol. Luminol is just a more old-fashioned version of Blue Star, and they might even be using something completely different nowadays, just using maybe those lights that give off the same fluorescent glow.
Then on the 1st of April 2011, if I'm correct, is this... Am I out of sequence a little bit here? But then an unidentified body was found.
Yes, right. So this is sort of the next thing was uncovered. A guy was walking his dog in the area in Sandpiper Street, which is the same street where Ntshongwana lived. And he sort of smells a very overpowering stench, which if you've ever smelled a dead body, you know what that smells like. And he kind of goes off the road and he finds a decapitated person, adult black male. And that's about 500 meters down the road from where Ntshongwana lived. But what do they find? They find a toe cap. And that's
Okay.
how they were able to link that scene to our suspect. So you would have had similarities in terms of geographical area, decapitation, same, victimology, but the toe cap was the real clincher, which we could forensically say this was coming from that pair of shoes found in the dustbin. This man was never identified, unfortunately. Then the next and final incident, which also became quite important, was while Ntshongwana was having his first appearance in court after McGray and his team arrested him, a prosecutor comes up to McGray and says, you know what, but this guy, I've already got a docket on the court roll for this guy through a rape he committed last year in 2010 of a lady that he picked up, offered a lift, took back to his house, and essentially kept her for 3 days in his bedroom, locked in the bedroom, and raped her over that period of 3 days. And also made some accusations that this lady infected his daughter with, his child, he said, with AIDS, and said, you have to end off all your relationships with other boyfriends and only be a boyfriend with me. At some times, he kind of left the room and locked her in it. And she then scrounged and took his ID. She took a pizza delivery stub. So when eventually she managed to get away, which she eventually convinced him to take her back to where she was staying and allow her to get some new clothes, and kind of agreed, and she managed to escape and went to the cops and said, here's the car details, this is the ID book, this is the delivery slip. And that's how he then ended up getting arrested, but then was out on bail awaiting that particular charge.
I don't know if I told you this when we did when we talked about this last time. It was years ago, but I actually have a friend who one evening, who's, lives in that part of the world. And one evening had been out with a bunch of people and they'd come back. And one of her girlfriends had a guy with her. And my friend kind of sussed that this was an issue. And it said, listen, you need to make sure that you let me know when you get home. And apparently this was in Ntshongwana. And because my friend was very diligent in making sure that this girl kind of contacted her as soon as she got home, and she was quite hard on the guy, like, listen, you take her home and then she's going to call me when she gets home, kind of thing. But seems like it was she may have dodged a bullet there, or dodged an axe, unfortunately. All right, so he's arrested. That's all of the incidents now. Yes.
Correct. Sorry. Yeah.
Yes.
Indeed.
Yes. Okay, so we've gathered the evidence together. We're putting it. Where are you at this stage?
Yeah, so we get called down, obviously, after his arrest. We get a very happy phone call from Colonel McGray. We head down, I think, the next day. When I say we, Colonel Yandelang and myself, and we go and participate in the interview that McGray was doing now with the suspect, Ntshongwana. He had legal representative there. Jason, I think, asked him like 70 questions. I think 30 of them he didn't want to ask, and I couldn't figure out why. Some of the questions were totally odd and wouldn't have got him into trouble if he said yes or no. Like, what shoe size are you? No, I'm not going to answer that. Okay, well, we'll just go look in your shoe. So I couldn't quite figure out. I think his poor lawyer was like, what on earth have I gotten myself into? I think it was Mr. Tlele was the lawyer. I don't think he ever has had a case like this. Because his eyes just got wider and wider as we asked various questions. But before we started the interview, Yanni and I were just chatting to him. And Yanni was a huge Blue Bulls rugby fan. So they were chatting about rugby. And it was quite, engaging. But man, as soon as the interview started, I'm not going to answer that question. I'm not going to answer that question. And kind of became quite of like, it was like an irritating guy to interview. And I remember sitting there thinking, my God, this guy is absolutely massive. None of us have firearms on us. If he wanted to grab one of us and strangle us, he could do that in a couple of seconds, snap someone's neck. So I made sure that Yanni was in between me and him, or that I could get out the door first if that was what was required.
You wouldn't keep him constrained necessarily. I mean, if he is that kind of much of a potential physical threat.
I don't know if they had handcuffs or maybe leg irons on him at the time. I don't recall that his hands were handcuffed in that interview. Look, there was about 4 or 5 of us policemen in there, so I'm sure we would have managed somehow. But I was thinking, man, this guy, you wouldn't want his hands around your neck.
No, absolutely.
You wouldn't get
And other than being kind of annoying to interview, Sam seems like a pretty, can talk rugby and a pretty normal kind of guy. I haven't heard any mention of a father. Was father involved in his upbringing? Was dad around?
Yeah, the parents were divorced. I think when he went to school in Settlers in Limpopo province, which is a very well-known boarding school in that part of near Polokwane, I think. So he had a normal upbringing. I think his father was actually a South African diplomat at some point. So came from a very good, stock family. Mom's a lawyer, was a professor in law. I think dad was being a previously diplomat, and I think had also been quite involved in rugby. So, and this is the thing, serial murder isn't the product of how your parents raised you. We don't know what causes you to become a serial murderer. So I feel very sorry for this family because, nobody raises a child to do this. But father was involved, but the parents, I think, were divorced at some point.
This all happened over a very short period of time. Is this, how do we differentiate between a spree and a serial?
The spree would normally be like, guy snaps and starts this part of town and walks to the streets or in his car, killing people as he goes, and cops kind of catch up with him. So it's usually a short duration, geographical movement, and kind of like once it's happening, we all know because there's like bodies, it's kind of like a big crisis kind of event. Because this guy murdered, carried on, a couple of days later, murdered, carried on. But it is you're quite right that it's in a very, very short time period, which is unusual. In the end, whether you call it a spree or a serial, it doesn't really matter. It's more of an academic argument. You've got a guy who's killed a bunch of people.
No, exactly. I was just curious around kind of where that line lies between a spree and just a serial. What position did he take? Was he, when it came to court then, did he plead not guilty? So
he got private legal counsel. Their argument was that he has this history of mental illness and these crimes were as a result of his mental illness. But they had two defenses. They said, firstly, we deny my client did this, but if he did, it was because of his mental health problems. It's kind of like, oh, okay, that's interesting, which caused him to be sent off for observation. And he was sent to Fort Napier in June of 2011. He had a team of 3 psychiatrists that assessed him as per the typical standard, Doctors Brayshaw, Dunn, and Woodley, as well as Prof. Pillay, who was a clinical psychologist. So a very experienced senior team of people. And they all concurred with the diagnosis, schizoaffective with bipolar. Some of them said they didn't have enough information to say whether he was criminally responsible at the time of the incidences. This, of course, was a big issue in court. And eventually, long story short, the psychiatrists all were unanimous to say, the government psychiatrists to say, no doubt about the diagnosis, don't dispute that, but this isn't why he committed these crimes. Of course, they did call their own experts. They had Professor Gangat, who was a very well-known psychiatrist, who testified saying that he feels this guy was not responsible and that his behavior is due to his mental illness. You can go read the judge's comments on Professor Gangat's evidence, and it was definitely not the kind of comments you want as an expert witness. And to make a very long story short, this was very much hashed out in court, and the courts every time accepted that, nope, don't deny the diagnosis, but it was not the reason why he went and did these things to people. And then I listed quite a number of sort of logical things as to why, in terms of how his behavior was. He tried to cover it up. And then most serial murder, well, almost no serial murders are mentally ill. So we have a lot of people doing worse things. So you can't say it's so bizarre and cruel or whatever, it must be mental illness that caused it. Because we've had people do far worse things who have no history of mental illness. So you can't just say because it's weird, must be because of the mental illness.
Yeah. What is the difference between delusion and incapacity?
Well, so delusion is like a diagnostic thing. Incapacity is a legal term. So really what we want to say with that is, at the time of the incidences, was he able to determine right from wrong and act in accordance with that? So typically we talk about, was he experiencing a mental illness, and did his mental illness affect his ability to make decisions? And to the point where we can't hold him responsible. So the problem here is his delusion, his false thoughts, his fixed thoughts that he had were typically, actually, my mom was trying to poison me. and my sister. So if he had killed his sister, he would have had a far stronger argument to say that that action was as a result of his delusions, because it would be consistent with his delusions. But here he was targeting someone else, not the people who he had these delusional beliefs, paranoid beliefs about. But anyway, as I said, you can read the judgment. It's there. I think it's available online. If you go to the Safley website, if you Google State versus Ntshongwana, it was thoroughly hashed out repeatedly in the courtroom. This delayed the trial so long because of the mental health issue and the expert witnesses. And I think it was the right decision that his actions doing the criminal behavior was not stemming from his mental illness.
Yeah,
so that means he would go to prison and get his treatment there. He would not go to a place like Fort Napier to serve out his time.
Okay. Did he talk about at all why, how he came about choosing his victims, or why he picked particular people, or did he ever come anywhere near kind of a motivation or a method of choosing or anything like that?
No, I mean, in the interview, he denied it all. Wasn't him, wasn't there, didn't do it. Like I said, his guilty plea was he didn't do it, but if he did, it was his mental illness. I don't think he got into the witness stand, which is not uncommon. So really was a bare denial, didn't do it, prove it. I'm trying to think what he said about the girl, because there was, obviously we had DNA linking him to, we didn't get into that. I think, so the DNA linked him to two of the male victims, Polish Ntshongwana, and the rape victims. When she went to the doctor, they took a swab, it matched Ntshongwana. But I think there was two DNAs that didn't match. I think I might have said initially that the DNA found in his house, in his bathroom, matched the lady, but the rape victim, and if I remember correctly, it didn't. So we had one unknown female DNA that was found in his house from blood, and I think the blood of another man that didn't match one of our victims. So what we did match him to, like I said, is from the rape. He was linked to that. And Polish Ntshongwana, who was killed on the 22nd of March, and Simon Ngidi, who was murdered on the 23rd of March, his blood was found in the car. So the car became quite crucial in terms of blood that was recovered at the time.
Okay. Evie Chu says, surely he knew what he was doing. What he did was wrong, rather, because he hid the axe. So it is these kinds of...
That's what the court said.
Yeah.
You tried to cover it up. You denied it. You hid things. Even when they were to return the vehicle, the damage that was in the vehicle, he said, oh, there was a small little accident. The blood, he said, in the vehicle, he said, the blood is because when this little small accident happened, my passenger hit their nose on the dashboard, and that's for the blood. So he was coming up with excuses for the damage to the car, the blood in the car, X, Y, and Z.
Okay. All right. I mean, I want to ask, this is a guy with a history of mental health issues. Any other kind of violent signs or anything that came to light? And given his background in mental health, is this something that could have been prevented potentially?
Look, I mean, most mentally ill people are not violent. There was no indicators from his delusions that or previous indications of violent behavior, which is not unsurprising in serial murders. They have very normal behavior until they get to the murders that they commit. So nothing that would be warning signs. If anything, if I was a psychologist working with him having come to the hospital and I knew he had delusions about his family poisoning him, I would say to the family, that potentially makes you a target, because if he eventually thinks you've tried to kill him, he might do something to you. They would have been more likely to be. So caregivers typically, if there's going to be mental health people or people with mental health issues violent, it's typically towards caregivers. And if it's consistent with that delusion, even more so.
Okay. We've got some more images to have a little look through. Talk to us about this one.
So when they wanted to have an identity parade or lineup with him, suddenly he just drops to the floor. And as Captain Monroe, who's there writing on that notepaper, says, he suddenly took a dive and then just lay there on the floor. And really, they just stood there and said, well, when you're finished, you can get up. He had no history of passing out. He didn't have epilepsy or any other medical condition that would cause him to pass out. So I think he was just trying to avoid the identity parade actually proceeding.
I mean, this image does give you a sense of the stature of the man, because he
Yeah, he's big.
takes up a big chunk of floor.
Yeah, he's a big guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this was sort of during the trial. There were lots of little ups and downs. Like the advocate representing him just one day doesn't pitch up in court. And then we find out that he's actually in Pietermaritzburg court, and he never let the judge know. And it was really, I mean, that's stuff you don't do. You do not pitch up. You have to be sick. That's the only excuse you're going to have. And not notifying the court that you're sick. Your office should notify the court. He was just in another court. And this guy was writing to be a hopeful judge. So that headline was hopeful judge, which is referring to the defense advocate in hot water. And the trial judge in this case was nailing him, because there was another time when he also didn't pitch up or something like that. Yeah, it's just not. He had an after the fact medical thing, but he didn't tell anybody. It's like, dude, how can you not let the court know? And this is an emergency. You're unconscious and you're in hospital. Of course, that's understandable. But even then, usually your family or your office we've got to let the court know that this guy has been admitted. So yeah, just weird stuff happening.
Rita asked, was his mother surprised when her son was arrested for these crimes? I mean, was the family taken aback? And you see, that's my mother asking. She wants to know if she should be surprised when I eventually snap.
Get arrested for something. I wasn't at the scene when she was arrested, but she seemed apparently, from what I understand, very calm when the police were there. And I think she said to them, the police said, look, we have to search your house. And she said, well, search my room first so I can go to sleep. It's like, okay. So it sounds like she wasn't, I don't know, what's the right way to put it? You think most moms would be freaking out, why you're here? My son would never do that. Where's your search warrant? And it's impossible. You got the wrong guy. She didn't seem to be...
like this was out of the bounds of reason.
Well, she would have known that there was already the attempted rape case against him, for which he was released on bail. So she would have known he's already had contact with the law. So maybe that she wasn't too surprised, maybe, when the police are there for something else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's Marius van der Looy and the axe in question.
Yes.
That's a team of guys. The main guys was Jason on the right-hand side with a tie, Rico in the middle next to him, and Marius at the back. I have to apologize. Because I only really got to interact with the guys back at court. I'm not too sure who the other two members of the team are, but there's obviously members of the investigation team. So again, a small team of people. It's not like you got 50 people on this case.
Yeah. But shout out to those guys. A job well done. And then again, just because you always want to know, is it like in the movies? And this one speaks to that a little bit. So yes, we do get the crime walls, guys. Okay, distinctly lacking red string, though, Gerard. And I think it's a major major miss from this wall. Yeah. Okay, so sentence.
To be honest with you, I was trying to Google that, and I couldn't. So he would have most likely. Paul, maybe you can be fast on the Google there. For the murders, because they would have seen as premeditated, the murders would have all gotten life. The multiple rapes of the rape victim would be minimum sentence would have been life. So probably at least four life sentences for the murders, another one for the rape of the lady, and then the other years would almost be kind of inconsequential when you've got a life sentence.
So I don't have to Google, because I have my cheat sheet and my little timeline of the case in front of me. So on the 19th of December 2014, he was sentenced to 5 life terms. So well done, Gerard. You were close. You nearly won the prize. In 2021, his first appeal was dismissed, and then in 2023, the Supreme Court of Appeal dismissed his final appeal.
Yeah.
So there we go.
And if you think about it, the trial started in 2012, so it was 2 years. I mean, that's a long time for a case to be on trial. Now, it can take some time for a case to get to trial, but this case started hearing evidence in November 2012, and it was primarily because of the expert witnesses, and then they wanted to raise that postponements. So it was a long time that this thing was actually ongoing in the courtroom, which was quite frustrating. I did testify. I think I testified during when the issue of his competency to stand trial, I testified. And I testified again at sentencing because they called a local psychologist to come and testify. Sadly, she was just out of her depth with this case. She might be a brilliant psychologist in all other aspects, but she tried to re-raise the issue of his mental state during the crimes, which had been thoroughly hashed out before. So the court was very angry about that. And she didn't quite get serial murder, so I had to jump into the witness stand and unfortunately testify, giving some commentary on her report. It's not necessary to mention her name.
No, look, I'm sure she's loads better now.
Hope so.
I hope so. I'm sure, she's... Anyway. Okay, so, that is then the story of Joseph Ntshongwana, essentially. It's one of those ones because, especially here in South Africa, you mentioned the moment there where Jan de Lange was chatting with him about the rugby, these are the ultimate heroes in the context of South Africa, aren't they?
Yeah, especially now. It's one of the few sports we can be really super proud of. And I think our soccer's doing pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. But look, certainly as well, one of those things which, it's interesting to consider, just the effects of kind of ongoing traumatic head injuries and what that can really do to somebody, especially somebody that already suffers from mental health issues or has a proclivity to mental health issues.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you to everyone for joining on the chat tonight. I think we can kind of wrap things up now, Gerard. I'm having such a good time. I want to find more things to talk about, but that's the case. And, we don't want to drag out for too long because although we like people to stick around till the end, we also don't want it to be a marathon for folks. What are your final takeaways? Was my last question.
Just, again, if you have a team of people who recognize what they're dealing with, they've been trained to do it, they put together a task team, you follow up, you basically follow the standard principles on how to investigate this, you'll have a quick success. And that's exactly what McGray did. He knew what he was dealing with because of the training, pulled in a good small team of people, looked for other cases, and it worked. It paid off, The clues are out there. It's up to you as the investigation team, are you going to find them? So that was just really amazing. And besides the fact that I said it's unique because it was male victims, the ex, who he was interesting. So that's why it made its way as one of the chapters in my books. If you haven't read my books, it gets into a lot more granular detail about the whole case.
Guys, and if you haven't gotten your hands on one of Gerard's books, that's Profiler Diaries, both the Profiler Diaries 1 and 2. This one is in, and this case is covered in your first book, isn't it? Is it first or second? Do you recall? I can't. Yeah.
I think I don't have one here. I have them at home. Wait, here's number 2 on my shelf.
Jared,
you've
forgotten
it. One.
It's part of your contract to have one on the shelf, Gerard.
Right. I was how to find the. There you go. It is in book. It's in book 1 because book 2's got the Neisner murder series, the Port Elizabeth sex worker, Krugersdorp sword attack, Brian the stalker, the Velcom decapitation and mutilation case, and then a guy who was threatening Barack Obama in book 2. So Ntshongwana is in book 1, along with the Quarry murder series, Jose da Silva, a few other serials.
Nice. Good plug there, Gerard. And one of these days, we're going to get a little store up and running and start doing a bit of merch, and we'll also get the book on there. You'll have to send me a book. We'll have to get a box of books so we can start selling those as well. But all on the plans for the new year. Also, guys, I know that we haven't been showing our documentaries and what have you. We are going through a bit of a matter on that hopefully will be resolved fairly soon. Nothing too crazy, but we are working our way through that little issue. So hopefully some of that stuff will pop up sooner than later as well. But otherwise, thank you for joining us as always, everyone. It's lovely hanging out. Let's have one little last look at the chat. We've got Shelley, first of all. She celebrates 8 months of membership. A really good chat tonight. Thanks for the great work and interesting topic. And thank you for being a member for 8 months. Shelley will be one of our earlier members then. So thank you, Shelley. And we always love having you join in the conversation. And to Angie, thanks, Paul and Gerald. We'll try and catch you next week again. Always so interesting. Great show. Thanks, guys, from Tetrafin. We'll have to find the Canadian flag for next time. Thanks, gents. Have a good week, and we hope to see you Tuesday night. We will be back Tuesday night, Marlene, and hopefully you'll be joining us too. Gerard?
We've got a guest, I think, on Tuesday, is it not?
Oh, yes, it's the 24th, because you are away. So we've got Kirsten joining us, yes?
Yeah, Kirsten Clark, my ex-profiler from my unit here.
Yeah, so Kirsten Clark. So me and Kirsten will be, so Gerard will be about 80% more attractive next week.
Okay, sure.
That's always the signal for me to do this. He's the most gorgeous man in crime is Gerard Labuschagne. Don't you forget it, folks. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. This is Profiler Africa. Do hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the bell and it'll let you know when new episodes are popping up. You can also send us super likes. You can become a channel member for a small monthly contribution. And, of course, you can buy us a coffee. Here's the link if you'd like to do that. And wink, wink, give away books for Christmas. Oh, we'll see about that. I mean, competitions. We've never had competitions. We're going to have to come up with some quiz questions, or how are we going to do a competition? We'll have to think about that. All right, guys. Thank you very much. I'm blabbing now. Time to go. Time to settle in for this lovely, rainy, thunderstormy, high-felt evening. Gerard, it's always wonderful. I miss you, man. It's tough having you so far away. We don't get to meet up for a coffee and a chat. I don't get to pop around your house with Starbucks anymore. But
True.
Hopefully, when things resolve themselves with the documentaries, then I'll be. I don't know. I think I'll just buy the Starbucks next to your house and move to Canada. All right. Thanks, Gerard. Thanks very much. We'll see you guys again next week. It's always been as always, it's a pleasure. And we'll see you next week.